Hello, freaks! Oh my god, it has been a journey. I don't even know what to say anymore. Honestly, I've been battling this curse that these. I'm not going to mention names here. I'm suffering for you, for all of you. I recently, I've gone through a bit of a metamorphosis. An illness called the fucking flu, apparently, in this world, and I don't really understand it myself. But yes, I'm a little bit under the weather. I'm not 100%, but I was like, you know what? My fans deserve it. And so that's why I'm here today for you. Okay, so I hope all of you are sort of, enjoying your day today, that are understanding that there are so many things in life worth fighting for, so many things that give us cause for celebration. This particular piece, if I played it correctly, let me try another shot at it. I know I was sort of rushing in because I want to make sure I got to the camera in time. Someone started it without me. Thank you, Grimmy. But yes, so this song specifically, the little jaunt or whatever that I was doing, is called the Fey Dance of Power, or just the Song of Power, whatever. It's to help sort of build something, but to sort of help animate you and to motivate you. It's a song that I sort of composed myself, and it is something that is very very reminiscent of certain cultures overseas. But I thought it was rather nice or whatever. Now this particular recorder, it is a soprano recorder. It tends to be a bit grating for my ears sometimes, as I've also been playing this on an alto recorder. The sound itself is a little bit more pleasing to my ears and to many ears. This one, you can purchase it very cheaply. I believe it's under $20 at Amazon. But it's of, pretty good quality. I mean, it's Yamaha for one. And it's a very sturdy, very low maintenance instrument, which is what I love about it. Very portable, and it can be heard for miles. Fuck you, neighbors! I know, but the tune, if I remember correctly, I must play it like this way. Hold on. You'll see in a moment. Watch. That's pretty much the general gist of it. Now, that's something that I like to play every now and then if I want to get pumped or get something going. Or I can play my drum back there. I know I've added some instruments because I'm like, you know what? This is a channel dedicated to songs as well as sorcery. And admittedly so, I don't really, and I was called out on this, honestly. And I was like, look, honestly, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. I should do a better job of, actually incorporating songs and things of that, sort of thing into these videos, into the workings and stuff. So I actually have a collection of songs that I've been working on for quite some time, and I have plans on releasing my very first book, sort of an hymnal, but it's sort of a dedicatory service, an ode to everything. My ode to everything, Moat. It's going to be an anthology of Alakai. That's like my other person here. But we sort of put these things together because I thought, you know what? I think this is a project that I believe is worth taking, because seldom anyone is using music to this degree in spellcraft to begin with. And it's something that is both healing, freeing, and captivating. It can be anything for any situation. It can be used to subdue the mind and the heart, or can be used to spurn it into action. Music has been used in warfare. Music has been used in healing. Music has been used in celebrations. So it is something that is, very synonymous with a lot of cultures and their feelings for certain things, used in times for mornings, or, in times of, wonder, or perhaps even ponderation. That's a new word I just came up with. You like it? It's mine. You can't take a penny first. So, but I didn't want to get into that too much. But I thought, you know what? I think opening up these episodes, I should play a tune or something like that. Now, I can't guarantee it every time. I have to be sort of, motivated by the spirit. It sort of has to take me over. But it is something that I do definitely want to work on. But that is not the subject for today's video. Now, before I get into that, I recently did a podcast with two beautiful co-hosts, I must say, Austin and Mike from Cat and Cauldron. They are wonderful people, very knowledgeable, and and very personable. They're like normal people and stuff. And I love their candor and their character. And that to me is what makes them beautiful to me, because they are the best parts of humanity and the worst parts, but there's something about them that sort of makes them come off as endearing to me. And that is a beautiful thing, honestly. And so I just wanted to make that, known to all of you. So whenever you see this video, please go ahead over there to, watch the videos. I don't know when they're going to be uploading this episode per se on their podcast. It could either be today, it could either be whenever. But whenever it does happen, I'll be sure to let you know. It was a wonderful podcast, a wonderful episode. Almost 2 hours we spent there talking, giving information, talking shit, laughing. We had a good time. And that's what I wanted, I mean, exposure is great, but I also want to make it an experience for everyone. So, there you go. So, so to just go into the subject, I thought there was something that perhaps was very intriguing to me. And the concept of memories came into my mind. Now, this is a subject I'm going to be talking about because memories is something that helps shape the human experience, and that can help shape any experience of any sort of organism that lives upon this planet. The thing is with memories, it's something that is strange. It's sort of like a file we have backed up into our minds that help us plan better for the future. And sometimes the memories can be very, very good for us. They can be things that bring us joy, or that can bring us, information when we need it. Or perhaps it could even times where it could bring us terror. Things like PTSD, just trauma, can be locked away. And even things that are a bit more painful, things like suffering and sadness, even things like depression, can arise from things like memories, and as well as, current things happening right now. However, I thought it important to talk about this because, things like memories, when it comes to things like our spell works and the songs, or even the things that we do, those things over time become locked into our memory. And so the things that we do during that time sort of associate themselves with that memory as well. And these few triggers that I'm going to mention are going to be things that can help bring back up those memories that perhaps you didn't even know that you lost. But what is absolutely intriguing about this is the fact that memory is something that can be caused with almost anything at random. And that's usually having to do with where you were when the memory was created, the place, the time, the season, the smells, the sounds, and the objects that were around that you had, interactions with. And so with that, I'm going to start as the first point with our lecture in memory. Students, please pay attention. There's going to be something I want all of you to sort of, make sure you understand, okay? Okay, now I want to make sure my eyes are facing the right way. I don't know to look at anymore. I get you there. I don't know, but somewhere in that pretty much location or vicinity. So I think the first thing I want to talk about in response to the whole memory discussion is something very amazing. I'm going to be going to objects. Now, memory is something that can be triggered by three things I'm going to talk about in this video: objects, smells, and sounds. Okay, these three things have been used in countless stories, songs, experiences when they're retold by individuals that lived them. One of these things are objects. Now, you have certain people that have attachment to objects. It could either be a family heirloom, it could be perhaps a type of, bracelet, or it could be perhaps a type of, jewelry. It could even be a chair, a jacket, anything like that, or even something you just have in your house to look at. Sometimes these things can have sentimental value, and sometimes these things are things that perhaps are honored by your family, and perhaps could have even been things that have been kept through, the ancestral lineage. But the thing is with objects, the objects themselves are capable of holding memories within them. They recognize touches. And so there are certain things that sort of happen when you come into contact with an object that's not really yours, that you don't really have any sort of connection to. There's a sort of strange feeling you get, like this isn't mine, or this feels strange to you, like it feels new. And so upon contact with that object, and the more you handle that object, you start to build a relationship of memory with the object itself. And the object, over enough time, will receive a type of, spiritual signature from your person that sort of helps it identifies itself as you, or is a part of you. That's why you have people that sort of have an attunement to certain objects, how they can't let go of certain objects, or how they always have to wear this specific article of clothing, or this bracelet, or this ring, or whatever, because it has value to them. But it sort of goes deeper. And it goes into a point where, for example, if you were to put that object in a box of other objects, as soon as their hand touches this object, you know exactly what it is, you know what it feels like, and you know what it means to you. Objects of memory are very important when it comes to our healing processes, as well as the other two I'm going to mention. Because when something feels familiar to you, it helps, it sort of brings things that perhaps you didn't think of before into the forefront of your mind. And it allows you to further analyze your current situation and where you've been. So when it comes to things like objects, it's good to, have a few objects or perhaps many that you sort of bond with, but things that are, I believe, key to your person specifically that you always feel an affinity for. Objects that I encourage you to, further keep that affinity. If you want to keep so many things, that is fine. But the issue is with having so many objects within your keep, it can lead things like hoarding, and then sort of the value that your spirit would have with it sort of dies over time. But I think honestly, that if I'm speaking honestly, I think over time your spirit just sort of gravitates to one or a few objects specifically, maybe through utilitarian purposes or through sentimental reasons. But these are things that I think it is important to sort of keep in mind. So whenever perhaps you are feeling a certain way, there's an object that perhaps belongs to someone that's no longer with you, and you want to have a sort of connection with that person one more time. And this is something that I believe is used even in seances or things like communications with the dead. Use that same object to sort of bridge that gap. If you have a special thing that was used for, accessories that perhaps your predecessor wore, a friend of yours wore, and you were really close, and then you in turn were close with this object, perhaps before the person died, maybe it was a gift or something that, they just bestowed onto you. It acts as a tag for their spirit because it's sort of bonded to it as yours did when you attuned to it. And so there's a stronger connection still that keeps you attached to this object. Now, there are sometimes where perhaps this object itself can have a lot of trauma associated behind it. So the longer you have it within your possession, you could potentially relive that trauma. And that trauma becomes, I believe, a mark upon your spirit or your flesh. But it can either be for beneficial purposes to help you, plan better in the future, or to remember to make wiser decisions or better decisions that were either in or not within your control. So having things like an object, you can call it an object of permanence or whatever it is good to have it within your possession to, sort of get you through life in any way, shape, or form you feel as though it can be useful. So that's objects in a bit of a nutshell there when it comes to things like memory. The second thing I wanted to talk about, and I think it's very interesting, something that a lot of people can have in common, is things like smells. Now, smells, believe it or not, we can associate with a lot of things. We can associate with food, we can associate with environments, we can associate with, even moments we were having, like for example, if you were utilizing specific herbs or oils and things like that during perhaps the times when you needed to relax, like if you went to a spa or something like that, if you were to go to perhaps a different location and you smell the same exact smells, it will transport your mind to that state of relaxation of a spa. You then recognize it as something calming, as something soothing, which in turn can be something that's very healing. You can also consider smells that you have when you're in the kitchen, smells that come from a food that perhaps your mother or your father used to make for you, your grandmother used to make for you, that perhaps no longer around. But these things sort of jog your memory and help you remember the good things about this person, the good times you had, and the food that sort of, helped nourish you, that came with that smell. And these sort of memories that you have can act as further healing, or perhaps can bring, certain happy memories to light, for example. Let's say the specific food was used during a time like Thanksgiving, where there's a lot of merriment, where there's a lot of joy, where there's a lot of, just overall good vibes and good times. But like, let's say, for example, you smell something like an incense of some kind that's perhaps used in a church where you were perhaps raped or violated by the priest or whatever it is. That specific scent that you've always sensed within that place is going to be an object of, not an object, and a smell of, what's the word? It's a smell of sour thoughts and emotions. It's something that sort of triggers that thought of like, oh my God, this smell reminds me of that time that this thing happened. I hate this smell, because you associate this smell with something negative. It has a negative connotation for you. And that's sort of a, sort of very crude, I think, example, but that is one that sort of just came to mind because it's trauma that many people share, but people don't think about. But perhaps something else, for example, let's say you have a very pleasant smell, and it is one associated with maybe flowers. And these specific flowers were in a field you went to with maybe a significant other or your friends, where you bonded very deeply over over the events in life where you had fun, where maybe you had sex in the fields, or maybe on the ocean side when you smell sea and salt together. You think of the ocean, the beautiful times you had by the water. All of these sort of smells and things that can trigger a memory. And these things, and like I said, these specific smells can either conjure the thought of, pain, whether it can be from trauma. It can come from a place of, content or happiness, like the joyous times they had within the fields or perhaps around Thanksgiving, or things like love, passion, or happiness when you are in an intimate, moments with another person, or, just, being alone in your own thoughts, and where you were when you had these thoughts and why you thought them. And these are things that can be used to help, sort of bring back those memories that perhaps we lost a while ago. If we go back far enough and we think about what I was doing during that time and what kind of flowers do you remember in your mind that records images, you can then find that flower and give it a whiff and see if it unlocks another memory. Or perhaps, further, what's it called? I want to say it realizes, but it sort of ferments or it thickens the experience that you had during that time, sort of making it a bit more real in your mind and in your spirit, and to how it made you feel during that time, and how to navigate the current situation with what you've gathered from that memory. So smell is something that I believe, even though I believe not too many people think about it, but it's something that you can definitely use for things like memory. And the third thing I think I want to talk about, and I might add one or two more things depending on how this video is going, is things like sounds. Now that's where, I sort of come in to this whole thing when it comes to my practice. Now, songs and music have been used through countless generations, through civilizations, ancient cultures, even the more modern. The songs have a way of telling stories because they pertain to stories, and those stories can have images within them, and these images create memories in our minds. Sometimes these songs as well can be used for certain moments of our life. During a time of mourning, more sadder songs, like when you have like something more melancholy like that can sort of trigger your mind to think of, past events that perhaps were saddening to you. But sometimes these emotions of sadness are necessary for healing. Because when something hurts, the body does what it can to heal itself. Like when you have a cut or a wound and it's bleeding, your body will release something to help cover the wound, and something almost like a strange, like pus or plasma, something like that. And during that process, it goes to things like pains, there's some minor bruising, scarring. It's trying to get all the impurities out, all the pain out, so that it can do proper healing. And that's exactly what sadness is for. Sadness is something that you should be able to express freely because it is your body telling you that it is necessary to purge these feelings, these emotions, this sort of harm that you have, though not physical, but emotional from your person, because otherwise it could prove even more, traumatic in the future to hold these sort of things in, not giving the body the proper release it requires for healing. And it can make the process a lot longer and perhaps more damaging, maybe on a psychological, emotional, perhaps spiritual level. And vice versa to that, or contrary, when you have certain music that sort of, triggers happy memories, like when you were at a party somewhere, the specific song everyone was dancing to, singing to, and like, let's say maybe years later, that song comes up on the radio and it just takes you back to that time. And it was something that perhaps you listened to in your youth when you were younger, when you were having fun, when you were living life. And it will then bring with that all the memories that you had when you were in your youth. And you see this with older people when they hear songs from their time. They start dancing when they probably didn't have the strength and the motivation before. And they start smiling. They were things that they remember. And it sort of brought that energy attached to those memories to the forefront to their body. And it sort of gave them perhaps a second life to live, even if it's for a moment or an instant. And so that's a very powerful thing about memories, especially when attributed to song. And also, as another point, when we also think about how songs were used in warfare, like, let me see if I can think of one. Even this one, for it's like the ones I played for you earlier. It's like, things like that, whatever. But imagine, someone's playing that during that time, in battle when those psychopathic colonials were fighting the other colonials on native land, and they were killing each other with muskets. They're just walking up to each other, playing a flute and playing drums while they're getting shot and blown a bit by cannon fire. That sort of thing. Songs like that sort of, amp up the body, whatever, that can be used to sort of motivate your troops. Or if you listen to something for like Rage Against the Machine, like, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Just things like that or whatever as an example. These things are affiliated with things like emotions of rage, emotions of anger, things that help you give that second win. And you can use that to sort of help you, get through a certain situation. Like if you need the extra energy to maybe fight or maybe to exercise or anything else, you can use that fuel even during combat, and it'll help heighten your senses because it gets you into that state of mind. Like, I'm here to fuck shit up. And that's what this music's helping me to do. And you will crank that bitch up all the way to level fucking 9, and you're just gonna go ham, And that's the sort of thing that you need to keep in mind when it comes to things like music, because it is something that is very mutable in its applications. And sounds like that from music can also help trigger those sort of memories that are even associated with war, that are associated with things like violence, or even things like happiness as well. So we have to be sort of careful with that. To us, every person that's alive out there has a specific type of I don't want to say calling. They have a certain draw to certain types of music. But I've noticed that for me, there are certain moods that I'm in, and I'm looking for the music that sort of matches that mood because it can help amplify and help set the tone for that. Sometimes the mood you're currently in is something that your body's telling you, we need to do this now. We need to have this right now because the body is in need of it. So you just try to have music to help sort of prolong it or amplify those effects. Or on the flip side, let's say you're perhaps in a very neutral stance, and then somebody plays a specific song of a certain type of genre or style, and then all of a sudden you're jumping off the walls, or maybe you're crying in the fetal position, or you're, or you're very angry and screaming at everything. But music and sound is very important and very vital when it comes to things like memories. And I think one more thing I'll probably talk about, which might be the last thing I think would be good, would be things like taste. Now, taste is something that has been hardwired into our minds, and it could go over the many senses, but I think taste is one that I think I should probably leave off on. Taste is something that a lot of people experience, unless you're one of the very unfortunate people that can't taste anything. It's something that's associated with a lot of memories in our minds, mostly with food, and food usually is something that is very nice to us. But very seldom and very rarely is food ever used as a type of punishment. Now, let's say, for example, you were probably a captive somewhere, you were locked up or whatever, and they would only let you eat certain specific types of foods. And so those specific type of foods, if you were to find them or eat something that tastes just like it, even if you're far removed from that place within your time, it'll bring back the memories of your captivity, of the horrible things you went through during that time in your life when you were a youth or whatever it was. And so it is something that is, very interesting and quite likely something that perhaps you want any sort of, affiliation with. The same thing as well when you think about, taste, like when you taste things like dessert, something sweet, it makes you feel kind of happy or sort of helps bring to mind happiness. And it is something that is quite interesting when you consider the epidemic of things like obesity within our country, just the need for people to eat to feel better. And a lot of times it is because sometimes the taste is a doorway into a world that we can escape to. And that's where sort of things can be dangerous. Sometimes what we're going through in life, whether it could be complete boredom or trauma of any kind, we don't really know any other way to escape it. So eating food is sort of how we get there. And it is something that helps us feel better. And sometimes we could even argue that perhaps the people with perhaps the most trauma, the most issues they have in life are probably the ones that are going to try to seek out more food and things to eat, because it's the things that sort of, helps them heal. It's the things that sort of, gets them out of the current situation. Like no matter how bad you're feeling, and like let's say it's really hard for you to eat, but let's say you make yourself eat. If the food is really good, you'll keep eating. And then sometimes, let's say you're in a bad place in time, and let's say, there's nothing that can sort of bring you comfort. You're going through a lot of trauma, and you eat a meal that perhaps a friend prepared for you, or perhaps it's something you ordered. And that food starts to bring to mind all the wonderful things associated with that taste. Your mother's cooking, being at home with your family, or being at your friend's house where everyone's talking and laughing, having a good time. Or perhaps it's a type of taste that you remember of maybe your partner's lips, or maybe someone that you once were with. Or perhaps, even the taste of something that perhaps you found out in nature, perhaps from another country that you visited, that give you a whole bunch of experiences. And taste itself, when that happens, unlocks these memories in one's mind in a way for you to help process, to heal. And sometimes you can't help it. Some people have cried over eating a meal, but it's something that was needed for their spirit to sort of get through. And some people sort of eat this food, and some people get mad about it, but it's because of how these things associated with. Now, typically, if you're mad at the taste of something, you're less likely to eat it, even if it was good, because it has been sort of associated with something negative in your life. But that's where the sort of memory comes in and these triggers. When it comes to things like the craft, when it comes to things like your lifestyle, when it comes to things like just getting through the motions of life, utilizing these sort of sense we have at our disposal is a wonderful way of sort of manipulating the energies that could otherwise, leave us downtrodden in a state of despair, or even things like anger. And being able to properly utilize and understand why these scents make us feel the way we do has very much to do with memory. Sometimes it's the unconscious memory, or something that we are, very hard trying to remember. That's like, for example, when you play games and you can't remember an artist's name that you remember, but you remember the song, and you know that this person's like, but you can't really remember the name. So someone would say something else that would then trigger a memory related to that name, and then you have it. So memory is very important when it comes to that. Now, when it comes to things like when you're trying to do a working or something like that, I do my things very differently from everyone else. I use a lot of things like sounds. I use a lot of things, things like emotions, or things like movement, for energy, whatever else. But when you consider the things like memory, these things can even help shape our practice, how and why we practice. And so these are things that we need to delve into. So if there's something perhaps that you are no longer doing within your practice, then you have to sort of explain to yourself why you no longer want to associate it. And most likely, it is because of a memory you have affiliated with this sort of scent, or with this taste, or, with this, sensory thing that you have. So it is something that is very interesting to me, and something that I think all of us should sort of keep in mind when we come to things like memory. If you take away a person's memory, you take away a person. A person is forged by the experiences they make in life. If you take away all those experiences which come from pretty much all these senses and stuff, they're not able to feel anything. They can't touch an object. They can't interact with smells, tastes, or sounds. You're not really going to have much of a person. You're going to have perhaps a null, or something that is pretty much devoid of any semblance of experience or life within it. Because memories are created from life, and the measure of life is seen within our memories and what we can call forth, okay? But that's that. When it comes to things like memories, so I have all of you sort of, took this sort of message, took this video to heart, that you are sort of having it burn itself into your mind, as well as this visage and this image, okay? There's a lot of things that all of us, are trying to, sort of understand, it's not something that some people can perhaps relate to, but I think all of us understand memories. We understand how they work, we understand why they work the way they do, and it is something that I believe all of us need to keep in mind. All of us need to remember. So without further more delay, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Remember that this has been Songs and Sorcery. And that you remember to be kind to one another. That you remember to, leave your brother out of the cage because it gets gassy once in a while. Remember to keep up on your studies. That you remember to, practice safety, whether it's sex or magic. And that you remember that you're part of a community, a family, a coven of people that are here for you, that are here for learning and expanding our minds on the subjects of the occult and anything else. If there are perhaps any questions or perhaps any comments you wish to make, please put them down below in the comments section. I would love to read it. Perhaps gain some insight into what you think about some subjects, or perhaps it's something perhaps if it is something that you want me to talk about, feel free to put that as well. I will be reading the comments, okay? Don't worry, anything you put negative, I will just use it for energy, and I will jerk off to it later. I'm gonna say this when it comes to those certain things, okay? So without further more delay, thank you so much, and goodbye, everyone. Until next time.